Today we are counting down 8 massive companies, worth trillions of dollars combined, that began in someone's garage, and one that started somewhere even more humble than that. Let's get into it. Number 8. Mattel. In January 1945, with World War II still raging, a husband and wife named Elliot and Ruth Handler teamed up with a friend named Harold Matson and started a company called Mattel Creations out of a garage in Los Angeles. The name was a combination of Matson and Elliot. Mattel. Mattel. They started by making picture frames. The leftover wood scraps from the frames, they turned those into dollhouse furniture. The furniture sold better than the frames, so they ditched the frames. Harold Matson sold his share within the first year due to ill health, leaving Ruth and Elliot to run the show. The startup loan was $1,000. First-year sales were $100,000. In 1947, they made a plastic ukulele called the Uke-A-Doodle. In 1959, they introduced Barbie. In 1968, they introduced Hot Wheels. Today, Mattel is worth over $5 billion and is the second largest toy company in the world. It started with scrap wood and a $1,000 loan in a garage. Number 7. Harley-Davidson. In 1901, 20-year-old William Harley drew up plans for a small engine. He and his childhood friend Arthur Davidson spent 2 years tinkering with it. Arthur's father, a cabinet maker, built them a 10 by 15-foot wooden shed in the family backyard in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That is smaller than most people's living rooms. In 1903, they finished their first real motorcycle and sold it to a local friend named Henry Meyer. Then they built 3 more. Then 5. Arthur's brothers Walter and William joined the company. By 1907, they officially incorporated. By 1920, Harley-Davidson was the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, selling bikes in 67 countries. That original 10 by 15-foot shed was so beloved that the company later moved it to their Juneau Avenue factory, where it stood for decades as a tribute to where it all began. Harley-Davidson is worth over $5 billion today. It started in a shed barely big enough to turn around in. Number 6. Disney. In August 1923, a 21-year-old named Walt Disney arrived in Los Angeles with $40 in his pocket, an unfinished animated short under his arm, and absolutely nothing else going for him. His previous animation studio in Kansas City had just gone bankrupt. He had no job. He moved in with his Uncle Robert at 4406 Kingswell Avenue in the Los Feliz neighborhood and started working out of the garage, building an animation stand out of dry goods boxes and spare lumber. His uncle charged him $5 a week for the room, and an extra dollar a week for the garage. Walt wrote to a distributor named Margaret Winkler pitching his animated series called the Alice Comedies. She said yes. Walt burst into his brother Roy's hospital room. Roy was recovering from tuberculosis, waving the telegram. On October 16, 1923, Walt and Roy signed the contract. The Disney Brothers studio was born. With a $500 loan from Uncle Robert, which Walt repaid with interest within 3 months, they moved down the street to a proper office. The Walt Disney Company is now worth over $200 billion. It started in a garage for $6 a week. Number 5. Hewlett-Packard. If any single garage deserves its own Wikipedia page, it's the one at 367 Addison Avenue in Palo Alto, California. In 1938, 2 Stanford engineering graduates named Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard moved into a rented property together with $538 in startup capital. Packard and his wife lived in the downstairs apartment. Hewlett slept in the backyard shed, and they used the one-car garage to build things. Their first product was an audio oscillator, a device used to test sound equipment. They priced it at $54.40, which significantly undercut competitors, charging between $200 and $600 for similar equipment. Their first big customer? Walt Disney Studios, which bought 8 units to help develop the revolutionary Fanasound audio system for the animated film Fantasia in 1940. They tossed a coin to decide the company name. Hewlett won. The company formalized as Hewlett-Packard on January 1, 1939. That garage at 367 Addison Avenue is now a California historical landmark. The plaque on the wall calls it the birthplace of Silicon Valley. HP today is worth over $30 billion. It started with $538 in a coin toss. Number 4. Amazon. In 1994, Jeff Bezos was a 30-year-old vice president at a Wall Street hedge fund called D.E. Shaw when he read a report that said internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year. He quit his job. He and his wife Mackenzie got in the car and drove across the country from New York to Seattle, writing the business plan on the road trip. He set up shop in the garage of a rented house in Bellevue, Washington. He originally named the company Cadabra, as in abracadabra. His lawyer misheard it as cadaver, so he picked Amazon instead, because it was the biggest river in the world and he wanted to build the biggest store. He started by selling books. Just books. His parents invested $245,000 in the startup. He drove book orders to the post office himself. The first year the site launched, he shipped to all 50 states and 45 countries within 30 days. Amazon is now worth over $2 trillion. The house where it all started sold in 2019 for $1.5 million. And for the record, well into his billionaire years, Bezos was still driving a 1996 Honda Accord. Number 3. Google. In 1998, Larry Page and Sergey Brin were PhD students at Stanford University who had built a search engine so powerful it was crashing the university's internet. They needed somewhere to work. A friend of theirs named Susan Wojcicki, who would later become CEO of YouTube, rented them the garage of her house in Menlo Park, California for $1,700 a month. A month before they even moved in, Sun Microsystems co-founder Andy Bechtolsheim had already written them a check for $100,000, made out to Google Inc., a company that didn't yet legally exist. They had to incorporate just to cash it. In that garage, there was a ping-pong table, some old computers, and a Lego brick server rack. They answered 10,000 search queries a day from day one of their beta launch. Google's parent company, Alphabet, is now worth over $2 trillion. Wojcicki charged them $1,700 a month for that garage. Best landlord decision in the history of landlording. Number 2, Microsoft. Okay, we need to be honest with you. Microsoft didn't technically start in a garage. In 1975, 19-year-old Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, and he and his childhood friend Paul Allen moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico to be near their first client, a company called MITS, maker of the Altair 8800, one of the first personal computers. They worked out of a small rented office. But the story of how they became a trillion-dollar company? That is genuinely wild. In 1980, IBM came to Microsoft wanting an operating system for their new personal computer. Gates didn't have one. He bought a system from a small Seattle company called Seattle Computer Products for around $50,000, cleaned it up, renamed it MS-DOS, and licensed it to IBM, while keeping the rights for himself. IBM put MS-DOS on every single one of their PCs. Then every PC clone in the world needed MS-DOS too. Microsoft collected a royalty on every single one. Microsoft is currently worth over $3 trillion, all because Gates said yes to IBM before he had the product. Number 1. Apple. The most famous garage in the world belongs to a house at 2066 Christ Drive in Los Altos, California. In 1976, 21-year-old Steve Jobs and 25-year-old Steve Wozniak started building personal computers there by hand. Wozniak designed the hardware. Jobs figured out how to sell it. To raise startup money, Jobs sold his Volkswagen van. Wozniak sold his HP 65 scientific calculator. Together, they scraped together $1,300. Their first order came from a local computer shop called the Byte Shop. 50 computers at $500 each. They built every single one by hand in that garage. The Apple one sold for $666.66. Woz liked repeating digits. There were actually 3 founders. Ronald Wayne was the third. He owned 10% of the company. He sold his stake back to Jobs and Wozniak for $800. Apple today is the most valuable company ever to exist, worth over $3 trillion. Ronald Wayne's 10% would be worth around $300 billion. He sold it for $800. And the one that didn't even have a garage. In 1964, Phil Knight was a 26-year-old runner from Oregon with a fresh Stanford MBA and a paper he had written arguing that Japanese shoe companies could do to German shoe companies what Japanese cameras had done to German cameras. He flew to Japan, walked into the Onitsuka Tiger factory, and talked his way into becoming their American distributor before he had any company, any money, or any plan. Back home, he partnered with his old University of Oregon track coach Bill Bowerman, handshake 50-50, and the two started Blue Ribbon Sports with $1,200 between them. Knight sold shoes from the trunk of his green Plymouth Valiant at track meets across the Pacific Northwest. First year, 1,300 pairs sold, $8,000 in revenue. In 1971, they renamed the company Nike, after the Greek goddess of victory. The swoosh logo was designed by a graphic arts student named Carolyn Davidson for $35. Nike today is worth over $30 billion. Phil Knight sold shoes from the trunk of a car at track meets in Oregon. 8 garages, 1 car trunk, a handful of dreamers who didn't wait for permission. The next time someone tells you your idea is too small, tell them about the garage. Drop it in the comments which one blew your mind the most. Please subscribe to Couch Tomato, and we'll see you in the next one.